Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Fu Boon-Ping, the Managing Editor of the Asian Banker. I'm pleased to welcome you to this teleconsultation session on changing customer expectations and behavior and how banks can better meet the demands of customers to achieve greater engagement and loyalty. More banks than ever are making the customer-centric proposition a key part of their retail strategy and operations. Banks are trying to gain greater competitive advantage through in-depth understanding of customer needs and behavior. Better customer insight can help banks differentiate themselves through better understanding of needs, motivation, and ultimately of the behavior and actions of customers. In today's challenging operating environment where margins are tightening and there's more regulatory challenges to deal with, as well as demanding customer expectations, banks are adopting a more customer-centric operating model. Leading banks in Asia and the Middle East are creating dedicated in-house customer experience function, bringing in the concept of design thinking from other industries and are benchmarking their customer experience against leading practices from the internet and e-commerce world. Now, to give you an example, OCBC in Singapore is one of the first banks in the region to create a group-level customer experience function that reports directly into the CEO. So I'm very pleased that for today's session, we actually have two heads of customer experience, one from OCBC in Singapore and the other from the Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank in the UAE, who will be weighing in on the topic. We will share some interesting insight from research that was done by the Asian Banker and SunGuard on this topic. Now, before we present the research, let me tell you a bit about what we have been doing at the Asian Banker. Next slide. Okay, we have introduced the Retail Banking Leadership Program this year in Singapore and Dubai. We are holding it in Johannesburg, South Africa, and Shanghai next year. This program is for executives in leadership position or are being groomed for leadership position. Those who have bottom line as well as execution responsibility. It is very practice-oriented, is peppered with Asian Banker research inputs. Now, our Retail Banking Working Group is a rich repository of information on the retail banking industry in the Asia Pacific and Middle East. If you go to our website, you will see under the main topic, the Retail Banking Working Group, we have profiled major banks' retail banking operations across the region, covering financial data, their key executive, SWOT analysis. We have also country profiles which include data, market share of leading banks across retail banking product lines. This working group is updated constantly with articles, best practice, case studies, which help keep the industry abreast of current and best practices. Now, for today's the agenda for today's teleconsultation, after my introduction, we'll be going through the findings from our Excellence in Retail Financial Services program. Now, to give us our perspective on what banks are doing, I have Dhuva Lakhlani, Senior Research Analyst of the Asian Banker, to present some of our key findings. Next to present is Dean Yang. He's the Vice President of Product Management Retail Banking at SunGuard, to present findings from the Bank Readiness Report. Now, this report builds upon the findings of the Bank Readiness Index, which was first conceived in 2012. The report is designed to help retail banking providers take a proactive approach to their customer relationship and to gain a deeper understanding of what their customer want or expect. Now, after the two presentations, we will have a panel discussion with our panel who comprise Edwin Yun, Chief Analytic Officer at Bank of China, who is calling in from Hong Kong. Boyan Blarick, who I mentioned earlier, is the Customer Experience Head of OCBC in Singapore. And also Ravi Nair, he's Executive Vice President and Customer Experience Management Head of Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank. Now let me introduce then to you, Dhuva, will be presenting findings from the Excellence Research Program. Durva?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Durva Laklani from the Asian Banker. In the course of the work that we do at the Asian Banker, we happen to collect a sea full of information which helps us to get a macro view of where the industry is going. I would be sharing a bit of this information on this call. Next slide, please. Yeah. Okay, we have been holding, next slide, please. Yeah. We have been holding the Excellence in Retail Financial Services program since 2001. This has now become the most respected program, not only in the Asia Pacific, but we have increased our coverage to the Middle East and Africa. The strong methodology we use, predicated by scorecards that has been developed over the years using industry knowledge and constant input from banks, makes this program the most respected one for retail banking. This has now become the award program through which banks are able to benchmark themselves relative to peers in a preliminary way through the scorecard. As we share the scorecard for each country in our publication and in meetings, we find that more and more banks are set thinking about the areas that they see themselves falling short. Apart from the best retail bank in each country and region, we also have product and process awards and some special awards which recognize leading initiatives in various products in question. Okay, by looking at the slides that we receive, looking at the submissions that we receive for this award program each year, we are able to tell what is the emphasis among retail banks in the region. In 2011, there was a strong emphasis on mortgages, as this was seen as the safest avenue to earn money. Internet and mobile banking was also a key focus, which continued in 2012. Banks felt the need to rebuild their brand, and Internet and mobile banking was used to do this. While this was being done, branch was not so much of a priority, which changed in 2013. This year, we saw that banks felt the need to concentrate on the branch, as this provides them a means to engage deeper with the customer. However, other customer touchpoints, that is Internet and mobile banking, did not lose sheen. Social media is a new area we're seeing more and more interest from banks in. Bank customers are most expressive on social media these days. This gives the bank an avenue to get to know what the customer feels about them in the most convenient way. This need to know what the customers feel about the bank is of utmost importance, else there will be a disconnect in what the bank offers and what the customer wants. This brings us to today's discussion about knowing what the customer wants, and Sangard will be sharing more on this later. Can you go to the previous slide, please? The scorecard that we use for Excellence Awards embodies what we believe are the most important areas for retail banks in order to be successful. As you can see, customer relation and engagement form a core part of the scorecard. This says a lot about the importance of the subject that we have chosen to talk about today. Next. Next. When we look at retail banks across the region, we try to map them on this chart that you see. The first stage of evolution in banking industry is that of product focus, where retail banks are only just introducing basic accounts. All banks having a product are successful. Everyone is growing. The next phase, that is sales focus, sees the market getting crowded with products from all banks. The level of competition is higher at this phase. All banks focus on gaining more customers and satisfying their banking needs. When after sales becomes ingrained in the operations, market share is important, and the country has entered the third phase, that is market share focus. This is the beginning of price war. In this phase, not every bank is successful. There will be consolidation or even liquidation for some, and the number of industry players will reduce to only the strongest ones. The last stage is that of relationship focus. This is the ultimate level of competition where banks have started giving utmost importance to the relationship with individual customers rather than market share. Countries like Singapore, Australia, and Hong Kong lead with some of their banks being in this stage of relationship focus. We are yet to move to map the Middle East banks here. I hope this part of the presentation was of interest to you. Let me now hand it over to Mr. Dean Young from SunGuard to take you through the rest of the presentation.
Thank you very much. I'm here today to talk about SunGuard's Bank Readiness Report for 2013. This is an annual survey that SunGuard runs around the Middle East and Southeast Asia to identify the trends with customer interactions with their banking institutions. We surveyed over 1,000 customers over those two regions. As you can see from the graphic in front of you, approximately 36% female, 64% male. Approximately 89% of the respondents were between the age of 18 and 44. The customers that we're surveying are customers that have an existing primary banking relationship. We are not surveying the high net worth or the unbanked customers. We're focusing on that very profitable segment of the customer base, existing customers, stable existing customers that have a primary banking relationship. We're doing this so that we can try and identify trends and track these trends year to year to help our customers work out their business strategies for interacting with their customers. We're noticing that technology is having a large impact on the customers, and we can see this and see the changing behaviour and the changing channel preferences of the customers from year to year in our annual report. We also run this survey to support SunGuard's own internal design and strategy for our products, using our outside-in design methodology, trying to identify trends that are happening so we can make sure our products meet our customers' needs. If we go to the next slide, please. We run the survey in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, as I indicated. You'll see on this slide the countries involved. In Southeast Asia, it was Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand. In the Middle East, Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and UAE. We're specifically selecting these two regions because SunGuard believes these are high-growth regions that we want to focus on from a point of view of serving the banking industry. We also think these are regions where the banking market is growing and where technology can have potentially a larger impact on the consumers that the banks interact with. What we're specifically surveying is the customer interactions with the bank. We're not surveying how big the banks are or how many branches they have or how profitable they are. The survey focuses on how customers interact with their banks, what they want from their banks, and what they think of their banks. Their attitudes towards the different institutions, the different channels, what their preferences are, what services and products they would like to utilize over which channel. We also question them on what they think their banks are doing well now and what they want to see their banks invest in moving forward. That allows us to match those customer expectations up against what we know our particular customers and prospects in these regions are doing from a go-forward strategy. If we can go to the next slide, please. The key findings from the survey, and as we go through the panel discussion, I'll undoubtedly bring some of the statistical results up. But overall, in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, trust from the consumer base is very high in their banking institutions. Although the bank customers show a lot of trust in their banks and indeed quite high satisfaction levels, they are still moving their business from bank to bank and splitting their banking relationships over multiple institutions. Some 60% plus of the respondents were having 3 or more banking relationships. So that's something that can be addressed, and I'll talk to when we get into the panel discussion. They also stated that they're definitely after a more integrated multi-channel experience. They see investments being made in the mobile channel, the internet channel, all the new digital channels, but quite often not backed up successfully by the staff channels. And that all that investment in customer experience that banks are putting into the new digital channels and making sure they have intuitive, customer-friendly digital solutions is perhaps being upset by the branch experience that ends up happening for a lot of the important processes and transactions that customers do with banks. And then when we investigate why the customers have so many banking relationships, it's certainly not a lack of trust or trying to minimize risk by spreading their products around institutions. It's more around the quest for convenience, product range, and personalized service on individual products that's driving them to different banks. And we have a fair amount of information on that reasoning that the customers have for spreading their wallet, if you like, around different institutions. So the SunGuard Bank Readiness Report is available. I think there'll be a link later to where that's available. But I'll pass back to Boon Ping for the panel discussion to start. Thank you.
Right, Dean, thanks for that insightful presentation, and also to Duva for that insightful and excellent presentation. Now, before I move to the panel, perhaps one question each for Duva and for Dean. Now, first to Duva. Now, it seems that banks are focusing more on upgrading their channels, including the traditional channels like branches. And this is a question that I would like to ask both Dean and Duva. On the one hand, it seems that the traditional channel experience is not matching up to the digital channel. So my question first to Duva is, how important is it for banks to still invest in traditional channels, even as they increase their investment in digital and multi-channel management?
Thank you. I think that's a very relevant point. Even when the banks today are concentrating on internet and mobile banking and all the digital channels that are available, that doesn't make the branch any less important. The range of transactions that can be done that want to be done on the digital channels is not very wide. I mean, there are still some transactions that every customer wants to go to the branch, face somebody, and then finish the transaction at a personal level. Besides, there is also a gap in the age of the customers that use the digital channels. This is a transitionary phase. The younger population likes and wants to use the digital channels a lot more, but that's not the case in the older generation yet. That can, of course, change in the coming years. But yes, right now there is a great value add that the branch can provide besides transactions and the age of the customers. There's also a chance for the bank to engage deeper with the customer at the branch, which is not very easy to do on the digital channel.
Great, thanks, Duva. Okay, now Dean, your research seems to suggest that the man or the staff channels experience is not matching up to the experience or the convenience that customers are getting from their digital channel experience. Could you probably tell us what would kind of account for the disconnect between a bank's traditional channel experience, even though they're investing, from our research, seems that they're investing more in them versus their digital channels experience?
Thanks, yeah. I think it's very obvious over the last 5 years that financial institutions have been very competitive about investing in their digital channels and rolling out new solutions. And certainly when rolling out those solutions, the emphasis has been very much on creating a great customer experience, an intuitive user interface, a big improvement over, if I dare say it, traditional banking. And that in part is driven by the other competition that we have in the digital channels from other industries outside banking. I think because of that focus, both from an investment point of view and probably also the intention of the innovative staff within banks on the digital channels, that they've lagged a little bit in their branch solution investments. As an example, a customer can sign on to the internet and probably see a fairly good 360-degree view of all their products and services with a bank. And that's pretty standard practice now in internet banking. But we find that when you go and visit a bank branch, quite often the staff in that branch don't have as good a view of the customer's 360-degree view on their branch solution as the customer has themselves on their internet solution. And that means that the staff feel less confident in engaging with the customer, less confident in cross-selling and upselling to the customer. So we think that needs to take place. Same sort of investment and focus that's taken place on the digital channels now needs to be reflected into the branch channels.
That's a very good point, Dean. Which is an area that we want to go deeper into, probably getting some comments from our head of customer experience here. Now, I just want to get an industry perspective on how the banks are seeing this change in customer demand and what does it mean for them. I'd like to address this question to Ravi and to Edwin. From your perspective, how are you seeing this change in customer expectations as well as their behavior across channel, and how is that kind of impacting your customer experience initiatives and your investments? Probably we'll start with Ravi and then to Edwin. Okay, just mindful that to keep your response brief. Thanks.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ravi Nair from Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank in Abu Dhabi, UAE. Actually, looking at the question, I think the comments from the earlier speakers, there are various factors which are affecting the demand and the change. But a couple of key ones come to mind. Firstly, customers have started looking for, or in fact demanding, solutions to their problems and not just banking products. I think this is a major shift in what the expectations are from the customer side. They expect us to understand not just their current requirement in terms of the product that they're looking for immediately or what they're expecting the bank to serve, but also in terms of their longer term ambitions and goals. I think this is a new element which has been, is a new trend which customers have started expectations from us. They also expect us to realize what is their position in life, their lifestyle, so that the products that we offer them are in line with that expectation. The second factor that I can think of comes in terms of the expectation, which is what I would call in line with the new mobile world. Everything is going mobile, so they would like their services at their time and place of choice. Obviously, this has been a trend for quite some time, but they also expect it at their preferred channel. And when they talk about the channel, it is not just the channel of the interaction, but they expect the same behavior across all the channels of the bank. And I think that's the common thread that is coming across, where they expect not just being able to fulfill one transaction to a particular channel, but they should be able to do it across any of the channels, and the same experience should be obtained when they either do it at one channel or move across channels throughout the course of the transaction. So for banks, this is a kind of a paradigm shift in understanding our customers. We not only need to understand what are their financial needs and the ability to serve them, but also to look at their aspirations and stage in life, their risk appetite, and tailor the solutions according to to the needs, and to an extent it's becoming one-to-one relationship management as we go deeper to the customer. So I think that's clearly one of the things that is top of mind for us in the banking sector, and we are trying to address this through the various the mechanisms that we are building in, as we said, uniform access to 360-degree view, ability to serve the customer across any of the channels, and ability to serve across multiple channels and make it smooth as well. Okay.
Okay, great, Ravi. Thanks. That consistency in the experience across channels seems to be a key element in meeting customer expectation today. They are increasing the younger ones who are brought up with mobile technology. Okay, Edwin, from your perspective, what are some of the changes that you see? You deal a lot with customer data, and how is that coming through to transforming customer initiatives and investments from your side?
Good afternoon, Edwin Yun from Bank of China, Hong Kong. From the banking industry in Hong Kong, from our perspective, alternative customer channeling is more a vision at the moment than a reality. The reality is still a physical, face-to-face contact. For a couple of reasons at the moment, I think. Number one, I think the mobile devices, which I think the industry has a very high hope in terms of future development, I think it's too limited in terms of offering, because banking is like buying a piece of goods in the mobile devices. It's tend to be a bit more complicated, and therefore at the moment it's still constrained by the fact that the more complex services cannot be delivered over mobile devices. Secondly, we also have to look at in terms of the profit so generated, because you can't offer too complex product over mobile devices, and from the bank's perspective, it's not generating a lot of revenue to justify the cost of spending. While we expect some years down the road, perhaps 3 to 5 years, this will become more or less a trend to invest banking applications in mobile devices. At the moment, it's not, because banks need to also look at the revenue so generated and the spending in it. So at the moment in Hong Kong, I think the mobile devices are mainly used for payment, and the amount of payment is not big. So our view is that we can't skip this, because as we understand it, and then the next generation of younger people, they actually grew up with mobile devices, where Facebook, Twitter are so popular and become part of their life. As you can see it, people actually using the mobile devices unstoppingly in public transport system. You realize that they like that media. So when these younger people, they grew up and they are in command of bigger wealth and pushing the product demand into a new dimension, a new channeling, we can see the maturity of using this as an alternative delivery platform in the future. Yes. So at the moment, we look at it with a keen eyes. We can't afford to miss it. But truly, talking about we invest a lot of money in mobile devices and do banking, I think it's too early to say so.
Yes. Now, Duva earlier mentioned about the industry going through a period of transition. I mean, even as the older generation who are used to the more traditional branches, and the new generation who are more technology savvy, and see the new digital channels as the way to go, and expecting their experience at the branches to be just as intuitive and just as integrated. To be able to see all their transactions and all their holdings. Now, next I would just want to bring Boyan into the discussion. Boyan is head of customer experience at OCBC, and I know OCBC is doing some of these things that are allowing customers, even at the branches, to be able to receive the same experience, the same intuitive experience. Now, Boyan, the question to you is, now, obviously, some of the gaps between expectations and delivery is in terms of that consistent experience. From your perspective, how do banks overcome this? Bearing in mind that a lot of you are going through this transition period where you have to invest both in the traditional branches as well as the new branches. Boya.
Hi everybody. Well, yeah, it's an interesting point. It's an interesting question. It's not easy, but what we are realizing is that almost by every project that my team is involved, by the moment we start, by the moment we engage working into the project, we realize there is a disconnect between what the internal business view is of what the expectation of the customer can be and what is the real expectation of the customer. So to minimize the risk of building something that is wrong, that is just based or founded on a hypothesis, we are literally investing huge amount of time in getting more clarity. So the studies that we are talking about right now that are available in the market are a very good starting point to start building up some hypotheses, but what we do after that is we take it and we really do the homework. So we challenge and we deconstruct some of the findings, and we try to make sure we see them reflected in what the customers that we are dealing with are really telling us. So this is a way to try to minimize the gap between what we're hearing from the customer that they are expecting and what they really need. And this is crucial because if the smaller the gap, of course, the higher is the chance and the higher is the opportunity that whatever we build will be effectively used and will create some kind of benefit.
Okay, interesting point, Boya. You mentioned about building customer insight into the process of even designing your products and the delivery. Now, I just want to ask also, Dean. Now, from your research, obviously you done your research with the segment of customers which are very profitable to the banks at this moment. Now, how do you see banks overcoming this gap? One of which you mentioned is the gap between their traditional channel experience and the digital experience.
Yeah, and I agree with Bojan's point. The expectations that customers have about interacting with organisations over the virtual channels are not really being set by the banking industry. They're being set by Google, Facebook, Amazon, eBay. When a customer goes to Amazon, for example, Amazon remembers they like horror movies and those are displayed at the top of the screen. That sort of personalisation is what customers expect now when they deal with any organisation over the virtual channels, and that sort of expectation is what they're expecting banks to deliver as well. So that means when we run a survey like the one that SunGuard's just run, sometimes the results indicate that the customers don't think the banking industry is doing enough, but that's because they're comparing the experience with other industries. And that, unfortunately, is something that we just have to live with. The survey showed that both in Southeast Asia and the Middle East, the customers wanted their banks to invest more in the internet banking and mobile channels. In fact, 70% of the respondents said they wanted internet banking transactions improved. 54% said they wanted transaction alerts over mobile channels improved. And over 50% said they wanted more investment and improvements in the mobile banking solutions. Now, I don't think that necessarily means that the banking industry is doing a bad job to date. It just means that we're continually playing catch-up with perhaps some other industries. So very much so, we need to continue to move forward and keep investing in these virtual channels.
Can I add something?
Sure, Boya.
I think this is really a crucial point because I think we really moved, or we are in the phase of moving away from an industry where it was relatively easy and convenient just to peek around the corner and see what the other bank was doing and try to get a sense of what will be the next steps in terms of strategic decisions and in terms of big moves. But now the game is literally changing because, as Dean said, and I perfectly agree with that point, is now it's really competing against companies and industries that have as a unique and only touch point the digital. So they are giving everything there, because if they are not good there, they will not have any chance to survive. And this has become the benchmark. Customers really don't care if there is a bank logo on the upper left corner of the website, or there is any other company's logo up there. What they see, what they experience, they see the value in it, they enjoy it, and then connecting the dots in terms of expecting similar things to happen from other industries is a very, very short step. So this is, I think, the big paradigm shift in banking. Banks needs to become aware of the fact that they're not competing against banks alone anymore.
Okay, thanks, Bert. Now, we have a perspective from one of our participants on the challenges in terms of why, for some banks it's difficult to extend the 360-degree view of the customer to the branches. We have a caller from the Philippines who says that senior management of some banks in the Philippines still view branches as transactional platform. So extending total relationship view is both non-essential and a security threat. So what do you think of that, Dean? That some banks see their branches as transactional platform.
I think that's the big advantage of the virtual channels. If we can move the mundane transactions across to the virtual channels, then branches can stop focusing on being, operationally focused and start to try and move to a more advisory mode of operating. And I think that's a trend that we see happening around the world, that banks are starting to rebuild their branch operating models, to start to move the mundane transactions to the virtual channels. That frees up staff and resources to focus more on cross-sell, upsell, and advisory type services. I think from the survey results, we see that the customers want to be able to do the mundane transactions at their convenience, and that means over the virtual channels. But they still absolutely desire to get financial advice and help from their banks. So when they come into a branch, it's for something important, whether that be a mortgage, whether it be, they're getting married and they're changing their circumstances. But when they come in the branch, they want staff to be available, to be knowledgeable, and to be able to give them the advice they're after. They just no longer need to come to branches to just do withdrawals and deposits. Now, unfortunately, we've still got existing customer segments, whether it be for cultural or generational type reasons, that still want face-to-face interaction for their mundane transactions. But I think, it's unstoppable now that more and more transactions will move to the virtual channels, and that will free up the branches, free up the staff, and allow banks to experiment with different operating models and refocus their branches.
Thanks, Dean. I want to get Ravi's kind of perspective from the Middle East, in the UAE. Obviously, we were discussing also between social and cultural norm between the region, how the branches view. So, Ravi, from your perspective, do you see the same challenges in terms of extending that 360-degree view to the branch in the Middle East, in the country where you operate, in the UAE?
No, actually, the Middle East and probably UAE in particular has people coming in from 100+ nationalities. This actually gives us a perspective from different geographies and the ability to choose the best practices. Our customers have also have both the experience and the appetite to adapt to the latest features and technologies. This has been an advantage for us and also a challenge. as we try to keep pace with the changing technologies on the one hand, but we struggle with keeping it simple. So while we do not face this issue, and in fact at ADCB we have the 360-degree available across all our channels today, and the branches are utilizing this to the hilt. They are not just processing transactions; they are also involved in advising the customers, giving them the best products that our CRM system is able to provide to the front end in the branches as well. There is a lot of customer acceptance in being able to understand the relationship, and culturally we find it quite easy to actually adapt to these new technologies and able to provide the relevant solutions to the customer. So I think we don't particularly see this issue about security or risk, but of course it's all managed within the relationship manager or the concerned front-end staff. But besides that, at a customer acceptance level, we do not find too much of a resistance.
Okay. Now, earlier we mentioned about some of the existing limitation of digital channels in terms that it is very kind of more suited for transactional functions. I probably want to get a perspective from all our panelists on the digital channels as a revenue generating channel, the potential for for the mobile phone, for the tablets to be turned into a revenue generator. And I know some of our banks are already working on that. Possibly, let me get input from Boyan on this.
About the value of the digital channel in terms of revenue generating, you mean, huh?
Yes.
So I think it's huge. If there are some products that, in my opinion, are absolutely perfect, and this is already something that we are doing today. It's if you conceive it and if you design it well in terms of the process, and if you support the decision-making process of the customers, if you allow comparisons amongst products, and if you build your enrollment process in a simple way, then you can, without doubt, you can sell products today over the web, no issues. And in terms of revenue, it's better than the physical space, because in terms of maintenance, you have smaller costs. So there are products that work perfectly. There may be more in future once the confidence of the customers expands, and if they go currently to a positive experience, they may be willing to explore more and to give more opportunities to banks to make a different type of discussions with them. And I'm thinking about education in terms of financial education, for example. I'm thinking in supporting again the customers in more complex financial issues. These all can be done through the digital channel already. Can it be done 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for over the whole year? This is another problem. This is something else. I also do not know if this is an expectation of the customer. So this is something we need to carefully understand, evaluate and understand. But in terms of, again, revenue generating, I think we are already there, without doubt.
Great, thanks, Boyan. Dean, you mentioned earlier, the digital channel is great for transactions, and from Boyan we're hearing it's happening where digital channels are also a great revenue to be providing product and services we need to look at the processes and specifically what customers are more suited for this kind of exchange over the digital channel. Now, from Sangha perspective, what can banks do? I mean, what can you do to help banks kind of move more of that process to the digital channels?
Okay. Yep. So the consumers in the survey are basically looking for convenience. So as I said before, they want to see all the mundane transactions across into the digital channels. Now, a lot of the banks in most of the markets that we're talking to today have already gone, if not the whole way, most of the way towards this. Transfers, bill payments, internal inquiries and stuff are all handled. Simple processes like ordering new checkbooks, potentially making complaints, starting to make product applications for simple products. Those are things that we're all already doing and that we do quite well. What we find, though, is that the selling channel for banks is still primarily the branch network. SunGard has existing customers who find that, yes, they sell more through the branch network, but their sales leads are far more successful over the digital channels. So I think the next step for the branch is to start to capitalize on this and trying to use the digital channels for more of a sales focus to try and drive more business. Now, we see from the survey result that year over year the use of tablets is gone up by 50% and smartphones has increased by 30%. And a lot of the customers we surveyed are already using internet and tablets for their banking. In fact, in Southeast Asia, Malaysia scored highest with 82% and 48% of participants using smartphones and tablets to interact with their banks. In the Middle East, Qatar was the highest user of smartphones with 81%. So there is a lot of usage by the consumers, and we certainly need to encourage the banks to move more transactions across. But I think the next step for the banks is to try and get better at selling through the digital channels, and as Bojan said, starting to move simple product applications to those channels as well. The problem with the digital channels is a lot of these more complex processes and service requests can't be completed straight through. They need some sort of manual intervention. Yeah, and that's where, as I talked about before, the branch staffed experience needs to back up and support the self-service channels, the virtual channels. So if a customer starts an application through the internet or through his smartphone, for instance, for a new credit card, and needs to come into the branch to sign, show proof of his identity, pick up the card, that experience when he walks in the branch needs to match the experience he receives on the virtual channel. After all, if I order a book from Amazon, not only do I have a great internet experience, but the book guaranteed turns up 3 days later by the courier. So it's the delivery post the virtual channel has to match the experience that the bank is delivering over the virtual channels.
One of the key findings that from your survey was that today trust is high and customer satisfaction is high among the consumers. Yet loyalty to any one bank is not guaranteed, and one of the reasons is because of the ease of use that the customers can find across different banks, and they're using different banks for different things. Now, given this, how important it is to kind of what can banks use to leverage off this trend to increase customer engagement and loyalty, or is it achievable in today's world, or is it just something to expect that customers will kind of be spreading out their product holdings and even transactions across different banks?
Yeah, it does. The survey does show that the consumers are spreading their relationships out. The reasons they give us for that is around convenience and product range. They would tend to pick, the survey also talks about why customers have their banking relationships. Now, the top 3 reasons that the consumers give us for selecting a bank to have a banking relationship with, in no particular order, are the branch location. So that's about the convenience of doing the physical transactions. The second thing is the simplicity of onboarding and product opening. So they don't want to be filling in multiple forms. They don't want to do multiple visits to create a product or to be onboarded. And the third reason is around the strength and the scope of functionality for the online and mobile offerings. Things like the pricing, interest rates, product range come down in the 4th, 5th, and 6th list for reasons that customers choose to join a bank. So what that tells us is if I'm opening my salary account and I need to create a new relationship with a bank, I'm tending to pick a convenient branch location. But when I start looking at things like my internet access, paying bills, I'm looking for the bank that has the best internet banking solution that allows me to do that range of functionality. You know, credit card type products, I may be looking at pricing and loyalty program features. So it's very difficult for a bank to try and lock in 100% wallet share of a consumer these days. Obviously, the wealthier the consumers get, the results we see are they start to spread their relationships for reasons like avoiding risk and spreading risk. So it's a difficult problem for the banks to solve. Certainly, I think things like personalization of the digital experience are things that will drive loyalty. If I feel that the internet or mobile banking solution that I'm interacting with is more my own personal solution rather than a generic bank solution, then I start to show loyalty and I'll start to utilize that system for more of my transactional activity. If the system starts to give me the financial advice and product advice that I'm looking for, I'll start to use that solution. So I think it's around trying to replace the personal touch. When you walk into a branch and somebody says, "How are you? Are you having a nice day?" How do we replace that experience on the digital channels? Because that's what drives loyalty, the feeling that I'm being personally looked after.
Right. Okay. Now, off what Dean has just said. Okay. I also realized we're running out of time. We actually kind of reached our 45 minutes, but I want to give our panelists kind of a chance to have their final comments on what Dean has just mentioned in terms of the key drivers around convenience, product range, and ease of onboarding experience to garner greater level of loyalty or satisfaction with the consumer. Now, what would you advise, what would you take away from this in terms of what your bank can do to improve on this area? Starting probably from Ravi.
Yeah, as we've seen, I think across different geographies, we are seeing a similar trend, and I think that's what we are seeing here as well. And some of the key takeaways, one is the simplicity and the knowledge that the bank has regarding the customer. So especially if it's an existing customer, they want the new account or the transaction to be done as simple as possible across the various channels. So to that extent, if we make sure that it is smooth and the whole process is taken care of in a simple manner, then we are seeing that the customer engagement is much higher. The second is in terms of the relevance of our what I would call intervention. So if we are actually offering products to the customer, how relevant is it to their current context and to their aspirations? If we are able to manage this using the data that we have, using the transaction information that we have, and the interaction at the relevant channel, that is something which creates a lasting impression in the customer's mind. I think these are the things that we are looking at, and I think obviously the whole mobile space that we have to look at so that the customer has the opportunity to do things at their own convenience, exactly as if they were in front of a branch officer or a manager. I think those are the critical things that we are looking at.
Thanks, Ravi. Now to Boyan, your perspective on this.
Pretty much in line with what we have just heard. Maybe just adding one little thing. We're really trying to get more clarity in terms of what we call the primary channel. I'm trying to understand for which type of customers which channel is really considered the primary one, and then trying to construct it, to build it, to engineer it around the majority of these needs. It is, as we have heard, and I agree with that, it is literally impossible to serve everybody with the same level of quality and experience and surprise them every time they get in touch with the bank across all channels equally. It is just too expensive, and the benefit will not be justifiable. So it is really about doing a step back from the idea of total customer experience across all channels, perfectly consistent, and really trying to understand by segment which is the primary channel that we need to focus and we need to refine and improve. One thing maybe as a final thought for everybody, yes, we are talking about moving on to complex products or solving complex solutions over the web because we see that there is an increased amount of customers that are showing affinity towards the digital channel. The point is that these type of customers that are showing this affinity or that are very, very confident about the digital channel are unfortunately not yet in a position of being able to understand or do not have the buying power for the complex products that we would like to sell them. 26 between 34 years old is 41% in the survey that Dean was presenting us. Yes, these guys are totally on the web, but these guys are difficult to be sold complex products. So this is the situation in which we are right now. Again, trying to understand for which customer, for which segment, which is the channel that can support ideally their aspirations, but also their needs, so that if they experience something positive, eventually, by the moment they will have the maturity to be in a segment that considers complex products, the discussion with these type of customers would be easier.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Finally, Edwin, your final thoughts.
Oh, one, I agree with what Dean said, that there's some technical challenges at the moment in terms of using digital channel to meet with customer demand and, more importantly, to build customer loyalty. I think the issue is not technology. I think those are what we call at the moment challenges will be overcome eventually. But banks must recognize the fact that different customers got different preferences. You know, why we hope that in the future, with the new generation of younger people growing up become the major force in the economy, then there will be more use of the digital channel to do banking. I don't believe that will be actually eliminating all other channels. As you can see, the internet already existed 15 years, and there's a lot of expectation when internet first came out in terms of internet banking. But as today, we still see people using the ATM machine to withdraw money, going to branches to do more complex transactions. I think going into the future, that may also exist. So bank has to be very careful about customer segmentation, knowing what the customer preferences would be and how they develop the channeling. And in a way, this is more or less a business decision. It's not going to be driven off by technology, but more importantly, it's going to be driven off by customer requirement, how a customer responds to all these new channel offerings. We got a very definitive and positive response from a whole lot of customers bank's investment in terms of digital channeling will be limited. At the moment, I think the bank is actually doing a bit of evolutionary kind of changes in channeling, and in fact, all changes in the banking environment are evolutionary rather than revolutionary. So we will see that there will be a multitude of channeling exists going forward into the future in the next couple of years. Certainly, digital channeling is becoming more important, but it's not going to be overwhelmingly important to the extent of elimination of branches and ATM networks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Edwin. Yes. For us at the Asian Bank, now a few key takeaways from today's session. One is, the waning of customer loyalty in this new world of where digital channel is becoming increasingly prominent. But also, as we hear from the panelists, there is still a place for traditional channels for the more complex needs that the customer has, and also increasingly the need to understand very in-depth customer motivation in order to influence their behavior and action. We also hear that there is continue to be a gap between the customer experience that customer get today from not just from the banks but from other industry. The difference in experience between digital and branch-based services. The need for some of these branch services to be just as simple, just as intuitive, just as convenient as the other services. Now, and also increasingly, banks are required to kind of close the gap. And we talk about the transition between the current environment where the branch is still coexisting with new technology to a time when more of the technology-savvy customers are in a position to require or have the ability to acquire some of these more complex products and services through the digital channels as well. Now, on this note, we'd like to end today's session. I think it's been a very useful and insightful one. I want to thank all our speakers and presenters for their insight. I'd like to thank Duva, Dean, Edwin, Boyan, and Ravi. A recording of this teleconsultation will be made available on the Asian Banker website. So do visit the website if you'd like to listen to a playback of the session. We would like to thank everyone for calling in this afternoon. Until our next event.